Da-da-da! Welcome to the ultimate Power Lunch live show of this season. And by ultimate, I mean last. And by last, I mean I'm going to take like a 6-week break because our producers, Serendipity and Random Happenstance, told me they wanted to take about a month and a half off. So they stopped putting people on the application. Those of you not familiar with the show, that's how I run the show. Serendipity, Random Happenstance has run great for a year. They want a break. I get it. Didn't even know universal forces need a break, but I guess they do. So anyway, we have 3 fantastic guests. We had a 4th fantastic guest who had a not fantastic computer. So Andrea will be joining us on a future episode after we work out that technical difficulty. But our 3 fantastic guests are in fact here. I bet you want to meet them, whether you do or not. Here they are. Ta-da! Meet our 3 fantastic guests. Before I go to them, quick about me. If you don't know me, I'm Michael Whitehouse, the guy who knows a guy. You can find out all kinds of things about me at megaconnector.com, including the fact that I am cool enough to have the website megaconnector.com. I've got some upcoming events. If you go there, there's a button that says events. Click on it, and you will find all the things I'm doing. The next thing I'm doing, according to this whiteboard up here, is a workshop on how I run summits, how I plan an entire summit in less than 4 hours with no stress or agita. And how, if that's too much for you, I can do it for you. So check that out. And all the rest of the stuff's on there as well as the Entrepreneur Summit coming up in 2 weeks. That's enough about me. Let's meet our guests. Carol Vincie, tell us about yourself.
Well, thank you, Michael. I'm Carol Vincie, and I, as you see in the attachment there, the ADHD Performance Co-Pilot. I spent decades and decades of undiagnosed ADD. I was actually told at one point in my life that I had been far too successful to even think about ADD as an issue. Unfortunately, that was 30 years ago, so I missed that opportunity. And I say co-pilot because this is your personal journey. And I am here as a sounding board for support, to let you scream at the world if you don't want to do it in your personal environment. I've been there. I've done all of that. And I want to accelerate other, particularly business women, because that's the perspective I can speak from, but accelerate their journey. So they didn't have to take as long as it took me to be able to babble so apparently comfortably about the strengths and superpowers of ADD. I do not address the defects and deficits. You've been beaten up your entire life with that fallacy, falsehood, intimidation, and I am here to help you figure out what comes so naturally to you that you sometimes don't even value it. And these, your strengths and superpowers, can't be bought and taught. And you need to position yourself so that those can be recognized and you can benefit both personally and financially from those strengths and superpowers.
Awesome. Thank you. Definitely. That's a topic near and dear to my heart, so definitely excited to talk about that a little more. Next up, we have Steve Feld, Biz Coach Steve.
Hello, and welcome. Hey, I'm Biz Coach Steve Feld, and I'm a business marketing strategist, podcast host, professional speaker, author, and, well, coffee enthusiast. I think Michael knows that. I love coffee, even have my own brand. I love it that much. But coaches, business owners, and entrepreneurs hire me to crack multiple 7 figures, to get that 7 figures, and then let's make it multiple, and without burning themselves out. Because let's face it, a lot of business owners, they're trying to do everything in their business, and it feels like you're spinning tires in the mud. It's time to stop that and get the help you need and get that truck moving forward. And I think we're talking about everything marketing today, and that's always a key topic of most business owners.
Awesome. Yeah, you try and do everything. Yes, I don't know what that's like, but I can imagine that could be very unpleasant. Yeah. And next up is Laurie-Ann Murabito.
Hello, everybody. Warren Buffett said that learn public speaking skills and you will increase your value by 50%. And I think if you learn public speaking skills, it will actually increase your bottom line by about 80%. I'm a reformed, painfully shy girl who accidentally became a professional speaker. That's a story for another time. But basically, I taught my nervous system how to peel my eyes off the floor and start looking at people and then proceeded to the stage. I today help coaches and consultants leverage speaking opportunity as their best form of marketing. I do that through my podcast, which is called Be in Demand. I have group programs called Be in Demand Signature Speech, along with private one-on-one coaching. So speaking is your best form of marketing, and speaking is the fastest way to grow your business and your personal brand if you happen to be in a corporate environment. So that's enough about me. I am so glad to be here with these wonderful people.
Awesome. Welcome. Yes, I'm very excited. As I was saying before, it's probably happened in the 50-something episodes we've done where I've known all the guests ahead of time. But I can't remember it. So I think there's almost always someone I'm meeting for the first time. And I know all three of you. I knew Andrea. I know Andrea as well. But again, our producers, the universe, decided that Andrea would join us another time. So yeah, whenever people can't make it and they apologize, like, don't apologize. The universe wouldn't let you come. Not your fault. That's just how this show works. Exactly the way it is meant to. So the way it is meant to is that Carol will be leading us off. So give us a few-minute introduction on the topic of ADHD, strengths, and superpowers, and why I and you are so awesome.
Well, as I said in my introduction, we come to the table with these unique gifts, talents, or sometimes even magic. We don't know how it happens. I had somebody I worked with who did vision boards, and she would do them in her home, not charging. And she said, "How can I charge? I don't. It's not work, but it is value to people, and that's the perspective that we have to look at it with." And I grew up in a family where having a defect was not acceptable. So while my dyslexia was obvious because I couldn't read, wasn't, saw, and who and how were ongoing challenges as a first grader. And so that carried forward throughout my life. And I kept working to the point where one of my staff members actually said, "Do you realize you're intimidating your colleagues because you're leaving them in the dust?" And I was so disconnected with that concept that I thought I had to keep running faster and faster to keep up with the pack. And it puts pressure on you. And the other side of it is because I just recently, someone forwarded me an article on dyslexia. And one of the things that absolutely knocked my socks off is it takes dyslexics 5 times more energy than normal people to read. And I knew I struggled, but I had no idea of the disproportionate effort that it takes to recover from something like that. So the concept of lazy, crazy, or stupid, we're not lazy, we're exhausted. If it takes 5 times as much energy to do everything in our lives, and the connection with ADHD is 50% of the population, at least these are the statistics that are available, are also dyslexic. So in addition to being beaten up for being not enough, we're expending this huge amount of energy to fit in. And as I look back, once I was able to accept the challenges that I had, I isolated on weekends to recover my energy. So that on Monday morning, when I showed up at my corporate desk, I could appear normal, whatever normal meant. And then to have a colleague say, "You're leaving everybody in the dust," and being so disconnected with the impact. I mean, yes, it accelerated my corporate career, but it also left me working alone. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons that I'm doing what I'm doing now, to say, first of all, doing this by yourself is virtually impossible. This is a team sport. You're going to need support and understanding and encouragement to make this transition. I first got a label for my ADD when I actually was invited because I knew one of the speakers at a UBS, the international financial firm, at a seminar that the guy who ran the department brought in all his senior managers to listen to 3 male, very ADHD successful personalities. And his comment to his staff was, you need to listen to these people because you have folks on your staff who exhibit the symptoms that they're going to talk about. They will not conform to normal corporate guidelines. But if you don't treat them well, they will go work for our competitors and we will never catch up. That was an enlightened executive who understood that there were certain concessions that had to be made for some of the things that we will never do if our life depended on it. But the value that we bring to the table is so out of proportion with, again, that normal population that we're trying to emulate, that gives companies a competitive advantage. So not only do I want to enlighten the people who are sitting quietly and hiding or concerned about being outed, I want to encourage business owners who really want to accelerate the growth of their business to hire at least some of us, because we will provide the ability to grow at a rate that you can't even conceive of.
Yeah, it's been great, having your perspective for ADHD, because obviously your ADHD story is very different from mine. As you took the corporate path and had very different experience. I never traveled into corporate. I simply bounced out of it and never got into it, and only followed my own entrepreneurial path. So it's been really interesting learning your perspectives as we talked on other shows and on the Open Virtual Coffee and whatnot. But it's
well, I was fortunate that I started working in an IT firm that was growing at a phenomenal rate, so that they hadn't fallen into the "we've always done it this way" pattern, because they were laying the yellow brick road as every day everybody showed up for work. Yep. And there was something new that had to be done because we were breaking ground at phenomenal rates. So that there was that opportunity to be flexible and allow for unique solutions. And my instincts kicked in. So, I joke that if I ever had to write 3 lines of code, I'd bring every computer in the world to its knees. I just don't have the ability to do that work. But what I was incredibly effective at was listening to clients and understanding their business problems and documenting that, and then turning that over to programmers and engineers who would then make a product that we could sell. But I also was an entrepreneur. I started my first business at 16. I taught piano lessons to little kids. And I did that from the time I was a junior in high school through college, because my dad didn't think I was worth the investment in college because of what was then known as only my dyslexia. And I didn't want to have the discussions of, you can't do this, and why are you taking this course? And I just said, I'm paying for it and I'm doing what I want to do. And again, the instincts helped me survive. But I ran multiple real estate businesses while I worked my 60-hour normal week in my corporate job. And that's one of the other characteristics that we come to the table with, is high energy.
We literally don't know when to quit. Not like we're
There
going to
is
stop.
no off switch.
We're just like, it's, why are you still working 9 o'clock? Why wouldn't I be working at 9 o'clock?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Stephen, Laurie-Ann, feel free to jump in. As I say,
Yeah,
it's power lunch,
Carol.
like you're at a table, just shout your way
Great.
into the conversation anytime.
We're just sitting around like a kitchen table. Carol, you remind me of you talking about being intimidating, that feedback that you were given. That reminds me of an executive that I worked with at Johnson & Johnson, and being a woman in a man's world, you know, she actually had this jar because she knew, she had this phrase that for every quality that she had, she said, there's two sides to every quality. And she said her leadership and her presence and her confidence on one side of that penny was very inspiring to the right people. But on the flip side, it would also be very intimidating to other groups of people. And she was really, what I admired about working with her was, you know, how she was able to read, or she always looked at it as her goal, to be able to like figure out like, which person am I talking to? Because she knew, she was like, at the end of the day, she was like, she goes, here's who I intimidated today, but here's who I inspired today. Always working on, you know, instead of me being so intimidating, how can I be inspiring? You know, and you know, as coaches, that's just what we do, is we help people see themselves for who they are and how other people see them. So that was a great reminder. What did you do with that feedback?
I was in a fog. I did not respond. Okay. I missed a lot of opportunities because I had one mode of operation, one speed. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I had a manager tell me, you know, you get the job done, but you break a lot of glass. And I was, at that time in my life, not able to balance what she did marvelously. To say, you know, how do I change my behavior so that I don't piss everybody in that side of the coin off?
Yeah.
And I just said, you know, I got a job to do. I can't wait the 6 weeks it's going to take you to get back to me. I mean, I would position myself outside of Vice President's office when I needed a signature at the end of the day so he couldn't leave. I mean, I was working on a project for Sears where the wheels were coming off of their cash register system. And, you know, I didn't want the front page of the Wall Street Journal to say Black Friday was a disaster for Sears because their equipment failed. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I had the opportunity to work in high focus, high pressure jobs because I had a reputation of getting the job done as quickly as possible. But I did have the negative side of ignoring the breaking of glass.
So I think this is really good for everybody who is watching this, because since this is exactly what you do. So what is the advice that you would give your client and who is given this sort of feedback?
Well, to understand it, first of all, to listen, because I heard it, but I wasn't listening. And that's, I think, Laurie-Ann, what you're talking about. You know, because I still remember as I'm writing my story and writing the advice, I remember these counsels that I was given, but I didn't listen. I did not respond. I didn't change my behavior. And I think there's, as you talked about, you know, this colleague at Johnson & Johnson, I was probably a little earlier in the women in responsible positions in the corporate world. So, you know, there was opportunity at every turn for us to be diminished and set aside. Mm-hmm. And so the part of me that fought for equality ignored the soft side that could have accomplished more. So that would be something that I would encourage people now. I mean, the discrimination I don't think is any less. I just think it's more subtle.
Yeah.
So, well, but you still need to position yourself in a way that you can be at most effective in the 360 version of that word.
Very true. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that's some really, really powerful information, powerful advice, and for people and part of my idea, with this show is that the right people will hear it when they need to. So hopefully, someone's out there who's either listening live or watching the recording, who this hits them and say, "Oh yeah, very good." So I'm going to segue that to Laurie-Ann, who is going to be talking to us
Yes.
about how public speaking skills or communicating with confidence will benefit your business and career.
Well, I'm going to go back to that Warren Buffett quote for anybody who is just joining us now. Warren Buffett said that if you learn public speaking skills, you increase your value by 50%. And I actually think in today's day and age that you would actually increase your bottom line, your value also by at least 80%, because everything that we do really revolves around communication. And now with so many different forms of speaking, I believe that speaking needs to be redefined. It's so much more than just stages and Zoom, or live streaming like we're doing here right now. Thank you, Michael. But there's so many different ways for you to increase your personal brand, and so let's just start with an easy way, because you may be sitting there saying, yep, that's nice for you, Laurie-Ann. You taught your nervous system how to become from going from a reformed, painfully shy girl to a professional speaker. But it all starts with, if you're in corporate, you attend a lot of meetings, can you ask a thoughtful question? At networking events, whether you're in corporate or you're an entrepreneur, being able to walk up to somebody and just say, outstretch your arm and just, offer a handshake and just say, it's nice to meet you. I'm Laurie-Ann. What brings you here? What compelled you to attend this conference? And just starting some conversations with people. But being able to get out there into the public, there are so many industry meetings. This statistic is actually mind-blowing, but there are 7,500 speaking opportunities every single day. And that number is just here in the US. That's 7,500. And that's just meetings and conferences. We're not talking about live stream events or being a guest expert in a mastermind. That's 7,500. And if you break that down into state by state, that's 150 opportunities every single day. Granted, there aren't that many in Alaska right now. There's, Hawaii and Florida are actually consuming some of their stats. But that's an obscene number of speaking opportunities that you could be raising your hand to speak in your industry. I have a client who's in the trash and recycling business, and he was just at I talked to him earlier today, believe it or not, where he was at an industry meeting, a local New England meeting, and he had the floor for about 10 minutes because people are asking him, what are the trends? What are you seeing out there? As a consultant, he speaks with so many different companies, and to be able to share that knowledge with other people, so it's not only benefiting your business, but you're helping to share that knowledge, and that's how you get known. So it's not always the, the very polished speaker. I'm going to take 4 steps this side to the stage, extend my right hand, tell a funny joke. And then it's not always that. I think too many times, we have this idea that with speaking, you have to be perfect, but I'd rather your personality come out. I actually met Michael at a speaking event, and I thought he was hilarious. And Michael, wasn't that one of your first speaking?
That was my first time in front of an audience since the pandemic.
That's right. Thank you for sharing that. But he's like a natural because he's just himself on stage. But look at where he is now. I've just seen you blossom and grow in the past. God, it hasn't even been a year that I've known you, actually. But that's what speaking can do for you. It just gets you in front of the right people. And if you're an entrepreneur, it's your best form of marketing to really draw in the right people. So it's a little bit of storytelling, a little bit of neuroscience, because I tell people that you want to tell stories that not only drive home the lesson, because we all learn through story, but it also taps into the objections that your audience is either thinking, feeling, or maybe it's just something that they believe in, but they don't know that there's another way. So speaking, just go out and learn public speaking skills. Don't be afraid of it.
Yeah. And actually, your timing coming on here is great because I just finished a 5-day challenge on confidence on camera. Because people have been asking me for years, like, how do you do that thing where you just get on the camera and whatever? And for years, I'm like, I don't know. I just do it. And finally, I reverse engineer. Actually, what happened, I watched a video from 2008, and I was like, oh, I am not a natural. You watched me 15 years ago? If I was a natural, my skill curve would be like this. He's not.
Yeah,
So,
and wouldn't you say, Michael, that like the medium also, there's different skills. Like there's the skills that you have like when you're on stage versus where I'm sitting here at a desk in front of a camera versus like when I'm recording my own podcast.
But the most important is as you described it, training your nervous system, which sounds very complex. But embracing the idea that I interviewed Orlia Moore recently for my podcast. And I asked her, have you ever known a speaker who flubbed something and the audience rushed the stage and just beat them up? And she's like, nope, never happened. Like, you ever known someone who bombed so badly on stage they died? Like, an ambulance had to be called and they were carried off in a stretcher. She's like, nope. I'm like, then what are people afraid of?
Yeah. Nobody in the audience has a gun. like the earth isn't going to like open up and swallow you whole. It's definitely
funny. No one's throwing bad, rotten fruit at you while you're on stage.
I was afraid of that at one point, Steve. I had to withdraw a product from marketing at an IT conference, and I was afraid that there would be some leftover breakfast items hurled at me.
Yep. Well, and that's the most places where people have a chance to be on stage, it's not withdrawing a product from the market or bringing bad news. Usually, it's a very compassionate, supportive audience because you're there to teach, you're there to share, and it's also good to practice every chance you get because someday you may find yourself on stage withdrawing a product from a developer conference, and that would be better if it's not your first time ever getting on stage.
Right. I can tell people that one of my first times speaking, it was very impromptu, like literally like a group of people, like, you do the speaking. I started laughing and I couldn't stop laughing. I was like trying to make the excuse. I just heard this really funny joke and can't seem to get it out of my mind. I finally had to look at a colleague and say, you have to come up here and do this. In which case I immediately stopped laughing. But, if I can recover from that particular moment, all I did was improve each and every time. And I'll also share that I never thought about the afterwards. I've been on a lot of podcasts and people just like, how did you go from being this reformed, painfully shy girl to speaking? I just never thought about down the road. I didn't think about, well, what if I'm terrible? What if the audience doesn't like what I have to say? I think I was just always like, well, I'm here to speak on this particular topic. I'm just going to provide really good value. And I just never worried about what would happen later. So hopefully that will help somebody who's watching today.
Yeah.
Yes. Michael, you talked about, looking back at 2008 at your speaking skills. I go back to a memory of the first class that I was sent to after my formal training when I started my corporate job was a Dale Carnegie course on speaking. So obviously they perceived that there was something that had to be fixed and fixed quickly. And then I joke that they lived to regret it because after that, I never shut up. But it sometimes takes just a little bit of coaching to get over that initial resistance or reserve. And when you get good response to the comments you make, that gives you the courage to keep doing it more.
Yeah. I think another thing that I've essentially come up like 3 times now is the idea of two things. One is the audience is generally going to be supportive, and two, audiences tend to be contrary. So if you get up there and you try to be perfect, they want to figure out how you're not. But if you go up there and you are open, and if it's your first time on stage, be like, yeah, I'm super excited to be here. This is my first time on stage, so I hope you guys are going to go easy on me, but I'm going to do my best. We're going to do this together, guys. And you do that, all of a sudden this whole audience is like, yeah, you can do it. Yeah. And you bring them onto your team because they want to be contrary. You're saying, I'm new, I'm going to suck. And they're like, no, you're not. Whereas if you get up there and you're like, I'm an expert, I know everything, they're like, no, you're not. So turn that contrary to your favor. And if you go up there and you're like, this may be the worst speech you ever hear because I'm very new, they're going to be like, I bet it's not. I know someone who's totally worse than you already. Don't you try to tell me you're the worst. I know way worse speakers than you. And you set the dynamic in the right direction.
Yep.
So with that pause, that seems to be time for Steve to come in. Steve, who is also a professional speaker, I hear. Let's bring up Steve. Steve is going to say, let's talk about marketing. Let's talk about marketing, Steve.
Let's talk about marketing. One of my favorite things. And speaking about speaking, I just got my TEDx speech. That's all done. It's in the bag. Check that off the list. But I have found years and years ago, adding public speaking as one of my marketing strategies to my business was one of the best moves I ever made. And I was that guy who I'd get up on stage, death grip the lectern. So I lose all circulation in my hands, turning them white. They now become part of the lectern. And inside, I felt like I'm going to explode if someone doesn't get me off of this stage quick. And I'm thinking I'm sweating on the inside of my jacket. Thank God I have a jacket on. No one could see it. And then after I'm done, I'm like, a little help here. Little help. I'm frozen. I went from that, realizing that I got to change that. And I was on stage in front of, I've turned around 3 businesses. So I was always in front of all of the employees all the time. And that's the way I felt every time I got in front of them. So I went and got that corrected at Toastmasters. But then it was like, okay, that's nice, but how can I take it to another level? And that's when I said, I'm going to just get out on stages. And then I started incorporating that into my business. So by doing workshops, seminars, summits, those kind of things. And I couldn't agree with you more, Laurie-Ann. It's different way of speaking on different mediums. Being here in, your podcast dome, if you will, or your Zoom environment is one way, but being on stage is a totally different thing. And I always tell a lot of business owners who are comfortable or semi-comfortable with getting on stage because they are experts in their field and they can share that knowledge. And Michael nailed this. It's like, I think it was either Robin Williams or Shakespeare who said, you could die many deaths on stage, but only one death in life. So get up on stage. Believe me, you have a message to tell. And if you're the expert in whatever field, someone wants to hear it. And they will be supportive. They won't throw rotten fruit at you. I've tested that theory out. And so far, no one's thrown anything bad at me yet. But talking about marketing, it's like that's one area. And what I hear from primarily small business owners, entrepreneurs, coaches, is like, I hear them say, well, I've done like Facebook ads and it doesn't work. Or I've done direct mail pieces and it doesn't work. And I hate to tell you, it all does work. But you're focusing on the tactics of things. That's the medium that you're using. When you should be focusing on the strategy. Focus 80% right there. Use that Pareto principle. That's your text, your headline. Is it talking to your target market? Or is it talking to everyone? Now, if I gave you guys a general message, you probably would ignore it. As most of us do when we see ads or hear ads. What do? We ignore it. But if it's talking to us, so if there's an ad for ADHD, I think someone might perk up in this group. Whereas the other of us go, oh, what? What were they talking about? After owning 7 businesses, and people say, yeah, I have a problem with starting businesses? No, I love it. But are you talking to your target market? That's the first thing. And are you solving their problems? Or are you just trying to blurb your junk out and buy my junk? So you got to really know who your target market is, what are their problems, and how are you solving them? That's why your ads are not working. It's your ad. It's the text. It's the copy. It could be the graphics. I just had this discussion with someone this morning. They showed me the graphic and their text of a graphic they're doing, and the image that they chose did not align with what they said and who the target market was. And I couldn't figure it out. And I showed this to someone else in another group, my accountability group. I said, I need your feedback. Does this image match the text? And everyone goes, I don't get it. And I go, the sad thing is all of you are their target market. So that was a quick, easy litmus test that I'm going to save this person thousands and thousands of dollars of doing an ad. Because is your marketing resonating with your tribe, with your target market? And even the image is very impactful. And I know talking about speaking, it's like going up there, and I've heard this from someone before. Yeah, this is my first time speaking, so be kind with me. And they use that line 5 or 6 times that I heard. And I finally said, you know what, I'm following you. I'm going to get the audience to turn on you. And they're like, why? And I go, because you keep using this. It's good to use it if it is true, but now you're using it as a crutch. And it's not true, and you're deceiving the audience. And me personally, I have issues with that. You should always be honest with your audience. And I got up there, I go, folks, this is not my first time, but I know I'm not the best speaker in the world. Speaking of not best speakers, and then I just transitioned. But I took their thunder away that they took from the audience, saying it was their first time, and brought it back over to me. And then I just wanted to say, hey, I'm going to just deliver content. So you better get ready to take notes. And that's all I did was give them content the whole time. No call to action at the end. And what Laurie-Ann was saying, it's the afterwards. It's the after, and it took me a long time after realizing being on stage is one thing, but after you get off the stage is vitally important. Get in the back of the room, be present, open up, share your content, share everything you have to everyone who comes to you in the back of the room. That's when the magic really starts to happen. That's when they're wanting to book you and want you to be on their stages and so forth. So I say to anyone in marketing, it's like, know who your target market is, because I only speak to associations where I know where my target market is sitting in the crowd. And I get offered some crazy stuff to be on. I think we've had this conversation or mentioned it somewhere before, Michael, in one of our groups. I got offered to speak at a psychology convention, and they were wanting me to talk about the 7th dimension moving into the 5th dimension. And I don't even know what that means. And it wasn't Inception that we saw earlier, but it's like, that's not my crowd. It's not my target. I don't have the knowledge in there. I'm like, I don't want you. They're like, well, we saw you speak at all these summits. We want you to be there. I'm like, it just doesn't match up. So why would I do that to myself and my business?
Yeah, I think you mentioned an important thing, Steve, about integrity. There's an expression, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And it takes just one slip to lose integrity and years to restore it.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I say when you're on stage, you're doing marketing, even your marketing pieces need to be upfront. Stop being the snake oil salesperson. Yeah. Those days are gone.
I think there's a huge thing in marketing that I think people don't realize, because if everyone does it, no one notices there's a problem. But there's certain areas of non-integrity that are assumed. One example I've seen, I shared this in an email I sent out to my list recently entitled 77 minutes in, he still hadn't taught me anything. I saw a speaker live on a stage, 20 minutes, explained the overview of a concept, nothing actionable, but the overview, and then said, come to my webinar. And I'm like, okay, I get it. You're teasing us. So we go to the webinar. There we're going to learn something that will show us what we know, so we buy something. Cool, I'm open to that. Went to the webinar, 77 minutes in. He had given his 20-minute speech longer. Still hadn't taught anything. And I posted that on Facebook, about this had happened. And then I was really shocked because I don't hang out with those kind of people I hang out with. Like if they say they're going to teach you something, they teach you something. And the comments were, what did you expect? That's what webinars are. That's the way the business is. That's, they're all like that. But what that does, that is like, oh, that's just how it is. The public's like, yeah, that's just how it is. So I don't go to webinars. So us with integrity who are like, no, I'm teaching a workshop, in 2 weeks, I'm teaching a workshop on how to run a summit. I'm going to literally share my entire playbook and it's all going to be right there. And then what I'm going to offer is, and then I could do this for you. That's what I'm selling. But I'm giving away the information. But a lot of people won't believe that because they're like, no, I know what a webinar is. I'm not going to that webinar. I'm not going to waste my time listening to you tell me how smart you are so you can sell me a course, because we've gotten so used to being lied to that we're like, everyone's lying. They all lie. And so it's such a challenge to differentiate yourself, which means you have to not use the naming conventions that they use. You have to not use the copy strategies they use. There's so many areas of marketing that what the gurus teach you is wrong by definition because the gurus teach it.
That's it. And I even have a presentation I've done live, and I showed mansion. This is not my house. Me and in front of unbelievable cars. Those are not my cars. And I go, when you're watching all these other people with their photos like this, that's not their house. That's not their cars. They took these photos when they were on vacation. Come on, people. We got to wake up that they're, snake oils people. So let's get to the content here. And they're all like, whoa, you're not going to pitch us for 20 minutes, give us 2 minutes of content, and then pitch us for another 30 minutes for call to action? No, we're 3 minutes in and there's my whole spiel about me. Now let's get into content.
Yep.
That's sort of my approach too, Steve, that I always, as soon as I started speaking, it was always my goal that the audience would leave with some sort of 1 or 2 gold nuggets. And I remember meeting planners like, are they going to be actionable steps that the audience can? I'm like, oh yeah, because I don't believe that anything that I'm teaching should take weeks to implement. You can do this right away. Michael, your, camera confidence. I mean, it's like people get off of one of your lessons and it's like, go grab your phone, look into the camera, hit the live button, share something. That's it. And it's like the more that you do this stuff, the more that it gets easier and easier. It's doing the reps. You go to the gym, you want to start doing bicep curls, you can only do 15 pounds. Great. That's why you don't pick up the 50-pound weight. You start with the 15 and you move your way up. Just teaching ourselves new skills.
Exactly. Yep. And that's what I want business owners, when I'm presenting, it's like, I'm going to give you stuff you can do today without spending money on marketing and advertising. You don't have to buy my program. You don't have to buy this software and learn to have a learning curve. No, let's do the simple things that work and have proven to work and stop overcomplicating it.
Yeah. Well,
Steve,
and that's, go ahead.
I was going to say, Steve, that I have a funny story about when you were sharing about, the psychology and they wanted you to teach about going from this dimension to another dimension, completely something that that's not even remotely in your wheelhouse.
Not even, I looked at their landing page. I didn't even understand their landing page. I was like, it is so far out of my element.
It happens. I got somebody who's on my email list was on a committee. And so this is how I get the email. Like, hey, somebody on our committee is on your email list. We're doing it was a chamber event. It was a women's business conference. We want you to be the keynote speaker. So I have my meeting with them. They tell me all about everything. And so I agree to speak for them. We negotiated the fee and everything. And then they said, fabulous. We want you to speak on life balance. Now, because integrity is one of my highest values, which is why I probably got into speaking, because I said that I was going to give a speech. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I was just like, oh, I thought they knew. I thought they had at least visited my website, which spoke all about leadership and not about life balance. So I had to turn it around Like, how do I speak about life balance, but leave the audience knowing that I speak about leadership, and personal development? And I was able to do that, but you have to be speaking to the right audience, because otherwise their feedback forms are going to be like she was terrible.
Exactly.
Expectations.
Yeah.
Well,
And life balance is such an amorphous subject. I wouldn't even know where to begin.
so you could begin anywhere.
I'll share how I started this. I actually started in the back of the room. And I had told the woman who was introducing me, I said, you'll introduce me. I said, I'm going to start in the back of the room because I was all mic'd up. And that's how I started. I said, I started walking, and the audience is like looking around like, where's the speaker? But that's what I said was like, life balance is a moment to moment thing. It's not some box that you check off and I've arrived. You are constantly achieving this. And then I just like twisted it into, there was actually a funny joke that I ended up doing that then I got known for. And it's like, I had a friend of mine who showed up throwing balls at me that I had to hold all the balls, because isn't that what life balance is? See how many balls you can actually hold at one time. Yeah, it turned into a great learning experience. And that's why I was sharing that, Steve, because you at least said no.
Yeah. And you just proved all of everything we talked about. People throwing things at you on stage. I mean, you just threw that out the
It's actually a pretty funny video.
Very, very Inception right there. I think what we were talking about before about giving the value. If you're trying to convince me to buy your stuff, you got to show me you know something. So the contrary example, I actually showed some LinkedIn this morning that there's someone who I saw at a networking thing, and he said there's one mistake that almost everyone makes on camera, and I'll teach the solution to it in my workshop. And we're like, what's the mistake? You'll have to come to the workshop. Like, no, I won't, because I don't think I'm making it. It's not a problem I'm aware I have. So it's very much like, I'm creating mystery and suspense. Like, no, you're not. You're just creating confusion and annoyance. Conversely, I think of someone like Phil Palucha, who's an amazing coach and spoken on like 6 continents and maybe 7 continents. I don't know, maybe the moon. He's done all these amazing things. And I had a conversation with him, and he shared, some advice that turned into the Networking Concierge program. Because he wasn't like, oh, well, I could teach you this, but you got to get in my program. And he just said, oh, yeah, try doing this and this. And here's something I heard, and this might help you. And then I introduced him to like a dozen people who became his clients, because I knew what he could do because he did it. If you want to show someone what you can do, don't tell me what you can do. Show me what you can do. So as a speaker, you don't want to hold back and be like, I know a lot of stuff. I've got a really nice house. But yeah, like that's why this is behind me. I show you as much as I can. I can plan an entire quarter in 2 hours. It's right here. This is the preliminary step. Technically, the final thing's a spreadsheet. But, it's right here. I'm showing that I can do it. And if you look really closely, you can kind of intuit how I do it. But I'm not holding it back. I'm showing, and that's why a bunch of people said, take my money, get me in a workshop, and show me the rest of it. Because I gave away the information so they would then jump in and take advantage of it. Yeah, I think there's this idea of you need to hide your knowledge and create the world's so full of knowledge now that if you make me work to get your knowledge, I'll just go get his knowledge or her knowledge, or I'll go on a YouTube video, and I don't know anything anyway. I assume you don't, because most people don't.
And there's nothing new anyways. I mean, it's just all in how we present it. Yep. We each have our own style, and just like go with it, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That is so much of it too. There's dozens of people who could, and just dozens of people more experienced than me who do quarterly planning and 12-week year and whatnot. But for whatever reason, people said, I know you're ridiculously disorganized, and you disorganized a quarter. So I want to know how you figure that out. Because if you can do it, I'm sure you can help me do it, because I'm way more organized than you are. Pretty sure that's how most people joined it. But it's who do you want to learn public speaking from? Who do you want to learn marketing from? Who do you want to learn ADHD strategies from? Who do you know, like, and trust? And I'm not going to know, like, or trust you if you're not telling me anything and you're stringing me along and being like, but wait, there's more. More? You haven't even done anything. There's still nothing.
Well, come to my workshop, Michael, and I'll tell you almost.
Yeah, you have a problem. At least if he'd been like, 3 of the people in this room are making this mistake right now, and in my workshop I'll tell you about it. Then at least I'd be like, well, maybe he's full of crap, but maybe not. I don't know. I want to find out. I'd probably be so annoyed I wouldn't go. But at least it would be personal and not just many people make this mistake. You might be one of them. You might not. Who knows? What's the mistake? I don't know. You don't know. It's a mystery.
Turn on your light. There's the answer.
And now you've given me a challenge because I'm planning to do a 60-minute program session. I'm not using the nasty words, when I'm ready to launch my card deck, and I have to come up with a way to introduce it that doesn't include webinar or useless session.
Well, using the terms like webinar, I mean, there's a trade-off of you want people to understand without the baggage, but some of that's a matter of the copy you put with it that demonstrates that it's like so. So I've made a point of, when I write copy, of saying by the end you will leave with and we'll teach. That's what I did with this. I said by the end of this workshop you will leave with a plan for your quarter. So it obviously, unless I'm blatantly lying, which I try not to lie at all, but you don't know that yet. Unless I'm blatantly lying, you say, oh, okay, so you're not going to teach me how to. We're going to actually do it. This is a get it done workshop. But I'm a big fan of by the end of this event, you will have X. Because then there's also a clear, at the very least, they can call you out and be like, hey, you said by the end of this, I would have this. I don't have this. You talked about it, but you didn't give it to me. What's up? Versus, you will learn about... Wait, will I learn it? You'll learn about it.
We're just going to skim the surface.
Yeah. Will you
Cumulus clouds.
teach you about it? You'll get an introduction to an overview.
And
speaking of skimming the surface, we are at the top of the hour. So we're going to go around, do some final remarks. If your remarks happen to include a call to action, such as a website they should go to, feel free to include that. Starting with Biz Coach Steve Feld. Final words.
Oh, I always say, and I learned this the hard way. If you need help in your business, ask for help. There are plenty of people to help you, and there are always someone smarter, better than you that loves doing what you hate to do, and get those people on board. And speaking about marketing, I'll be more than happy to give away one of my books, 45-Minute Business Breakthrough. It shows and gives details on how to implement 8 simple strategies in your business today without spending more on marketing or advertising.
Awesome. So it doesn't talk about strategy.
It's like A, B, C, D.
Very nice. Is that at bizcoachsteve.com?
Yes, you can find it there and bizcoachsteve.com and /100K.
All right. Fantastic. And next up is Carol Vincie. Final words.
Thank you. You could reach out to me on YouTube. I will be adding content to ADD Businesswoman as a YouTube channel that covers some general information, some specific statistics, and will be offering a 60-minute session to determine if you are showing the signs of ADD or ADHD, or some loved one has been hiding from this. Some of the statistics that I offer that get people's attention is families with undiagnosed ADHD are twice as likely to get divorced. And even marriage counselors aren't aware of that.
Wow.
So if you're interested in saving your marriage, saving attorney's fees and child support payments, talk about the elephant in the room before it becomes disastrous. Men tend to live 13 years less with undiagnosed ADHD because of the risky behaviors that are part of the package. So if you have a loved one that you'd like to have around for a longer period of time, there's something that you would be interested in knowing more about. And you can get information by reaching out to me at carolvincie@gmail.com.
Very good. Thank you. And Laurie-Ann.
Thank you, Michael. I would say if you want to learn more about speaking and how to communicate with confidence, head on over to my podcast, which is called Be in Demand with Laurie-Ann Murabito. And you can also find me over on LinkedIn. That's where I also hang out a lot, and Instagram. But learning from my podcast is probably the best, easy resource. You can take me to the gym, and there's always a new episode every week. And reach out if you have any questions. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. And Carol, quick thought. I did a short video on the fact that it is possible to meditate even if you have ADD, because a lot of people with ADD think they can't. And the biggest piece of feedback I got was people saying, yeah, your video was good, but around 6 minutes I got distracted and stopped watching. And that's the problem with that audience.
Well, I understand. And I have to say, for the first time in my life over the last 2 years, I have meditated. And I never thought I was capable of doing that. But I also can't sit quietly for the 30 minutes. I'm scribing in the middle of the session the thoughts that come to mind.
Yep.
So one has to be adaptive to the process. But sitting still for 30 minutes is what I have been able to accept is a valuable experience.
Yes.
But my hand has to, I get all these notes. So by the end of each session, I have a page full of reminders and to-dos and insights.
There you go. So thank you to our fantastic guests. As we'll be taking a break until I believe March 17th or so. So wherever you're watching this, you'll see an announcement again. You can go to megaconnector.com. All of my links are there, including to the Entrepreneur Resource Community Facebook group, which is where I share updates, as well as my email list, which is where I share other, hopefully similar updates. When I'm really organized, I share the same updates to both places. When I'm not, you should be on both. That way you won't miss anything, because I do a lot of stuff. I am a mega connector after all. Thank you to our guests for joining the ultimate episode of the season. And you can apply if you want to be on the show. Let me put that on the bottom here. If you go to guyknowstheguy.com/powerlunch, that is how you apply to be on the show when we come back from our break. If you think you are interesting enough, have a story to share, something to teach, if you watch this and you're like, I want to be on that stage, fill it out. And it could be you. You might be approved. You might get in. In fact, I find that people who feel drawn to apply tend to be a good fit. So there's a very good chance that if you're a fit and the calendar fits, we're going to bring you on the show. We'll have an interesting conversation. We'll share with the audience. You'll meet each other. It's really cool. And help me, bring the show back from the break. So that's guyknowstheguy.com/powerlunch. And with that, I'm going to hit this red button. Guests, stick around for a second afterwards. But audience, you can go. Thanks for watching.